All right, Mike Sando is here, senior writer for The Athletic, one of the smartest people in football media. He writes great stuff weekly at The Athletic. What's going on, buddy?
Not too much, just settling in. I enjoy the tempo of the season. Then when it's over, I enjoy the off-season tempo. So it's all good. It's fun to get to do this.
I forget the tempo of the season. It's hard to keep up with. And the other thing is, like, the things that we have pop up on our calendar is astounding. Just like workflow finds us. But the biggest thing for me is, like, especially now, like you and I both started, further before than me, further in the past than me. But like when I started covering this, Thursday Night Football was like an irregular thing. Now, like, you got to establish the narratives on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because they could change by Thursday. Like, somebody could get fired on Thursday. It's crazy.
It's so different. It's funny. I remember the first time when I first started covering the league, I was replacing John Clayton at the Tacoma News Tribune covering the Seahawks. And John goes, hey, for these mini camps, you just kind of come out and watch practice. I don't even write off of them. I mean, it's just a good chance to get to know the coaches. And now people not only write off them, they're doing stats off of them. Can you believe that? So it's way more intense in terms of that, and better in some ways, worse in some others. But I've enjoyed it all the way through.
I think in some regard, I've said this before, but like, the phrase "a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing." I think sometimes in training camp you can get that, where it's like one tweet from a beat writer, so and so has great chemistry with the quarterback, and it's like, whoa, and then it's like a storyline for a month, and it's like, okay,
yep.
Right. It is what it is. All right, so we're gonna do "Is It Real" with you, Mike Sando. You wrote about a couple of these teams on Monday. Really, really good stuff, and it doesn't. There's not a week that goes by where a lot of somebody's don't screen grab something you have, and it is one of the best pieces of analysis. I wanted to have you here. I want to start with this: is it real, Daniel Jones?
Yes, it's real that they can win that division and that they can run a coherent offense with him. I think it's as much of an indictment of Anthony Richardson as it is an endorsement of Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones
perhaps,
is still
perhaps an indictment of Joe Shane and Brian Daboll.
Yeah, well, yes, it could be that as well. But the Colts were an 8-9 team last year with Joe Flacco going 2-4 as a starter and Anthony Richardson completing 47% of his passes. So it's not like they've been a frustrating team. And I think they've been viewed with a lot of fatigue. Just, oh my gosh, Ballard's been there forever as the GM and they haven't won a playoff game. Like, the storyline has been the same there for so long that I think it really was getting tiresome. But this has been a real breath of fresh air. And I think, like I said, Daniel Jones is not suddenly amazing. He still lacks consistent accuracy. He still takes hits, invites hits that could, be an issue for him. And then we'll have statistical regression. I mean, they're like, I was stacking all the Colts offenses back through the Manning era. And this is like the second to the 2004 team. They're not that. So it's going to come back to earth, but I think they're going to be, they're going to have a coherent offense and they have a chance to win every week. And you can't say they're not going to win that division right now with a 3-game lead on Houston. They probably will.
It's funny you say that about all the Colts offenses, because Eli Manning jokingly asked Daniel Jones if he's already the best quarterback in Colts history. And I didn't know it was a debate.
I love it.
It's just between Daniel Jones and Johnny Unitas at this point. Peyton's out.
I love the question. I love the relationship between the Manning brothers and just the dryness of that. It's so good. It's such a great thing to ask.
It's perfect. The hardest I've ever laughed in a Manning cast, I told our producers this, was on Monday. So Eli does the disguise thing a lot. And he was an undercover umpire at a Savannah Bananas game, and they played it. And Peyton just asked, Eli, do you ever go anywhere as yourself anymore? Yes. And I died. It was just such a good.
It's so great. He probably enjoys. I would bet everybody strives to be the top in their field and stuff, but there's a real value to anonymity in life. There's a real value in being able to go to the shopping center or walk across a hotel lobby without having 25 people ask for your autograph, which is the way it is for those guys. They never, and they love it. They're not complaining about it, but I bet you it's fun to be undercover and just be another guy,
I bet so. All right. So with Daniel Jones, here's what's interesting to me, Mike. He's throwing the ball down the field. There's not a dunk and dunk thing. His numbers beyond 10 yards on Sunday were really, really good. And then the second part of it, is, as you said, he's still taking hits. It's not like his pressure rate, I think 2 years ago with the Giants was 40%, which is way too high. But it's still like 32% behind the fourth best offensive line because that's kind of the way he plays, right? And
Yeah.
so it's not like he has the perfect situation to play quarterback in. And now Alec Pearson, concussion protocol, we'll see how that goes. But like, it just seems to me like he's just a quarterback who's playing well and taking advantage. Like, this is not, to me, as you said, it's not sustainable. He's going to be, QB1 for the rest of the year, but it is sustainable if this team can win 11 games.
Oh, I think it totally is, and I think they upgraded with Lou Anarumo in terms of
Yes.
defensively as well. They have a run game, so that's a big ally. We're going to talk about some of these other teams like the Chargers. I think that having the run game's really good for a quarterback like Daniel Jones. Some of the issues with him have been he's a great athlete in terms of on a straight line running.
Mm-hmm.
He's fast, but I'm not comfortable with him doing a lot of running because I don't think he has the great awareness to avoid the big hits. He's not as bad as Richardson in that way, but the gold standard is probably Lamar Jackson, who
Yes.
like can run a lot, and he's just so fluid in it. He sort of knows how to roll with the punches. Even when he takes a hit, it's like a good boxer who knows how to kind
Yeah.
of roll with it, and he doesn't really get knocked out. Whereas I think Daniel Jones can walk into some haymakers, if that makes sense. And I've seen a couple of those downfield this year where I'm like, okay, we're playing Madden here. You might come out of the game on that one,
Yeah.
and so I'd like to see that. But I think he's also liberated from that market and the expectations.
Yeah.
That New York, New Jersey thing, I think it's real for some of these guys like Sam Darnold, and that's why Eli Manning is fairly, unique in just his the way he was brought up and was kind of ready for it. But he wasn't great shakes the start of his career and was able to ride it out. I think a lot of guys can't, and especially now, they're firing coaches all the time and all of that. I mean, we've seen a couple guys that have success after leaving that market. I think it's harder there, way better in Indy.
Daniel Jones will have to beat a Savannah Bandits game in Indy, not in Yankee Stadium in 20 years when he shows up there. No, and I also think you're starting to see not Saquon left that offensive line, and look what he did. Daniel Jones left that offense. Look what he did. Xavier McKinney left that defense. Look what he did.
Yeah.
At some point, do we not look at
Leonard Williams went to Seattle and is like one of the top 5 defensive linemen now. I mean, he was good then too, but yeah.
Maybe it's just not a good situation there. Like you start to look at it. Seems like a pattern here. People play better elsewhere. It's funny. I used to say this about the Orlando Magic, but like the worst part of the Orlando Magic rebuild for me, the 10 years after Dwight Howard, was at basically all times the team that made up of players that we discarded would have beaten our players, right? Like we would just like trade Tobias Harris and these guys, and then they would go and be solid players and be like, oh, well, if you just put 5 of those guys against our 5, those guys would win because they're in better situations than whatever the hell we had going on.
Yeah, totally. No, it happens. I grew up in the Sacramento area. The Kings got rid of a pretty good basketball player in the last few years who's doing well now. So I know what you're talking about. Some of those situations just they're not that great for the player.
Not that great. Okay, let's talk about our next. Is it real? CJ Stroud slump.
Yeah, I think it's in the context of the team, though. I don't know that he's totally different. I think he's always had a little bit of issues sometimes feeling the rush and when he doesn't have good protection and not trusting it. I do think that can snowball over time. But here's the thing. I'm going to write about this tomorrow. I'm going to do a piece on the 0-3 teams. And I see a real disconnect there in terms of a team that thought they were close, right? But they made a bunch of changes that take time to take hold that were risky. I mean, you go with Nick Caley at offensive coordinator. I've heard great things about Nick Caley. I mean, he's one of those guys I've heard people in the league say, hey, this could be an up and comer, but he's never been a play caller before. So there's going to be a learning period. Probably he's not going to probably be Kyle Shanahan on week 1. So that's going to take some time. Then you basically replace 4/5 of your starting offensive line. Well, what one position group takes the most time to gel and you benefit from having continuity? And by the way, they traded Laramie Tunsil, who's probably the most talented player on that line. So that could take some time. And then, hey, let's turn over our receiver core. Okay. Everyone applauded, and me included, when they took the 2 receivers from Iowa State. I like them. but that's not necessarily plug and play rookie wide receiver. Now facing different coverages, different treatment. There's a growth learning period there too. So I am surprised that they're 0-3. I'm surprised they're this bad on offense. But the other component is the running game's not there. It's as bad as it's been in terms of the running back rushes. So I do believe that they're definitely in a multi-year slump. The other thing to remember is even CJ Stroud's rookie year, which was so good, they were 15th in offensive EPA per play. It wasn't like they were fifth. So they've never really been great on offense there. You have to realize that.
All that's interesting. To me, what's funny is they draft Stroud and Will Anderson. And we go, well, I killed the Will Anderson pick at the beginning because I thought, well, their timeline is so slow that going all in on a pass rusher right now isn't going to matter. Well, I got like a clown because immediately those two guys accelerate the timeline. And you wonder, as you just said about the EPA per play as a rookie, you wonder if those guys hitting and accelerating the timeline worked so well that we didn't notice other holes in the roster. And like we all talked about the offensive line, but I didn't think it was catastrophic. I didn't think it was like they can't be good for the next few years. And apparently it is. And I think the original sin they had was different players doesn't mean better players, and they switched out names. And then you mentioned Laramie Tunsil. Like I would keep Laramie Tunsil if I was trying to have a better offensive line.
I would too. It feels to me, I mean, certainly Nick Caserio is very involved there as a GM. He's one of those guys who can be on the headsets, and obviously Nick Cayley is probably his hire, right? Another New England guy. So I wonder if they're like all on the same page of how this is going to happen and come together. And maybe the first year that was successful was the aberration because it surprised everybody. That first year surprised everybody. No one, I don't remember a lot of people saying, hey, Houston's really going to hit this year. So, as more time goes on, you have to think that that's maybe true. Like we said, all those changes on offense were not necessarily upgrades on paper, right? They weren't upgrades on paper.
They were lateral moves in most cases. I will say that the Texans' success a couple of years ago is part of the reason I thought the Titans are going to be good this year. I no longer think the Titans are going to be good. I just want to get that out there. Yes. I just want to clear that out. I don't see them turning that one around. Although they play this weekend, you never know. You never know. The Chargers' incredible start. Is it real, Mike Sando?
Yeah, I think it is because I think they have a really good coach and a really good quarterback, and they're making better use of that quarterback by, really going against what Greg Roman's done in the past by throwing the ball a lot more, especially early in the game, coming out throwing. Now, I do think that their run game, they're going to want that to be there more than it is now. And so that is something I don't usually worry about with a Harbaugh Roman team. Like they'll figure that out. But, that's maybe one area that they could grow in to really round it out and be a team that goes deep in the playoffs. But I think that they're going to win a playoff game this year. I do. Now we'll see what the matchup is, but I like the way it's going. I think we've seen some different swagger maybe with Justin Herbert, and we've seen him, last week, 2 scoring drives in the final 5 minutes of the game. He's had, they beat Mahomes, I think was huge, even though the Chiefs have their own issues. I just kind of like where they're at.
You mentioned the ability to win a playoff game. It's easier is the wrong phrase, but it's going to be a little less predictable than we thought because there's about to be a team that's 1-3 between the Ravens and the Chiefs. That's happening on Sunday night. And I'm looking around. The Bills have their holes. The Bengals are done, straight up done. And I'm as a franchise, and although I floated this earlier, I was on Mina's show earlier, possible that the Bengals are so bad because they looked awful on Sunday that they're able to get like a Reuben Bain at the top of next year's draft. And it could be like a David Robinson, Tim Duncan thing. I'm just throwing it out there. Okay.
Yes.
But I'm looking at January in the AFC and I think we thought there was a hierarchy, and there's just not. There's just not going to be that hierarchy where it's like, well, you're good enough to win one playoff game, but you're not going to go into Kansas City and win. You're not going to go into Baltimore and win. You're not Buffalo. We'll see. But like, man, it's a way different picture than we thought.
It is. I mean, I think everybody had the same teams in the top 3 in the AFC, and the Chargers weren't one of those. And we'll see as the season goes on. I think Kansas City does have some real issues. Baltimore's just surprised me that they've lost a couple of these games. I mean, they're up 15 points in the fourth quarter on Buffalo and lose. I'm like still thinking Buffalo's good. I mean, Baltimore.
Baltimore.
I'm still like thinking Baltimore's going to have a great record. I'm not off of them. I think it's, frustrating and concerning, but I just don't think that the running back's going to fumble every week.
I don't think they're going to blow a 15-point lead every fourth quarter.
Yeah. Now their defense, we'll see over the course of the year, but I'm still in on them.
Remember last year, not that this is some blueprint, but last year they went from sieve on defense in the first half of the season. They make a couple adjustments. They become literally the best defense in football in the second half. Now, do they have a move like they were able to with Kyle Hamilton last year? No, because they're already doing that. So what's the second adjustment, right? And so that to me is going to be the more interesting part is like, can they adjust? What even can they adjust?
And I also thought, we've seen in the past there when they've replaced defensive coordinators, sometimes it takes half a year. Sometimes the second half, even when Mike McDonald took over there, I believe the second half of his first year was much better than the first. So I attributed some of that to, hey, okay, they figured it out halfway through. Well, they didn't change coordinators this year, and it's been a little bit dicey. That being said, they've played Josh Allen and Patrick. They've played some tough defenses,
Yep. All right.
They're tough.
Last one, Carson Wentz in Minnesota. And the Vikings in general, the JJ McCarthy thing is beyond weird. Seems like they want him to take as long as possible to get back. Carson Wentz was able to at least be solid while Isaiah Rodgers took over a game and got the first perfect rating in the history of PFF. This Vikings team, as currently constructed, is it real, Mike Sando?
I think it's what it's been. And it's largely defense driven. That was one of the items, that was one of the most screen grabbed things from last week was in their 23 wins during the O'Connell and Flores era, they have produced 20 times as much EPA on defense as on offense. And so, there's a lot of quarterbacks going to win that game. And not to discount Carson Wentz, but that's a real easy context to win the game in and look good in and not have a lot of pressure on you to have to throw when they think you're going to throw. I think Carson Wentz is not as good as Sam Darnold. I think he could potentially be better than he's been recently with those receivers, with that coach. I do think Kevin O'Connell's good with quarterbacks. I do think obviously Justin Jefferson, he's got a lot of good things going for him. So I would probably rather play Carson Wentz than the current JJ McCarthy, but they're in a weird place, Kevin, because they lead the league in cash spending this year.
Yeah.
They've really gone all in with this team. They've kind of overachieved the last, couple times in the last few years to where, okay, what are you? Are you this team that's going to break in JJ McCarthy and be patient? That would ideally what you do with a young quarterback. And they kind of halfway did it. They said, yep, we're in on them because we're not going to do Darnold. We're not going to do Rodgers. We're not going to do Daniel Jones. But now you're sort of like, there's no reason we have to make a decision to keep JJ in the lineup. I feel like they're caught in between, and I'm not sure how well it's going to end for them. I don't see either one of those quarterbacks really like winning a playoff game or taking them deep. So they could almost be in a similar place that they've been this year going into next year, depending how it goes.
I want to shout out Sam Darnold has been really good. And I was completely supportive of, at least last week, he was phenomenal. And some of his numbers,
he's been good.
One of the best deep passing, one of the best intermediate passing. I was completely supportive of the JJ McCarthy succession plan. And I feel like I might be wrong. I feel like the Vikings might feel like they're wrong too. So,
I feel like they had to be conflicted internally on this decision, and I would have been too. It's a hard one when you have a team that wins that many games with a quarterback that you like but don't love in Darnold. I can totally understand not wanting to go big, and then you have to go on your evaluation with JJ, but it just almost feels like whatever they would have done wouldn't have felt right. Does that make sense?
100%. It feels right when Mike Sando is on the show. He's got the 3-0 column coming out on The Athletic. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you very much.